What's up, guys? I'm Cody Brockway, and you are back here for another episode of Brockway's Vinyl Bites. And look who we got. We got Kermit the Frog. He's back at long last. He decided if I paid him enough, he'd come back. And here he is. How you doing, Kermit? I'm doing well. Well, we're doing well, too, and we are most certainly glad to have you back in the fold. What we're talking about here today, you saw the title, Progressive Rock's Unsung Heroes. That's right. Maybe the people that you don't think of when you think of these respective bands and groups and projects that they're part of, but they are absolutely a massive part in the sound of all these projects and bands and so on and so forth. That, in some cases, they add a really nice element to that project, or in some cases, you just can't really have the band at all. Or in some cases, they're just part of so many projects that their influence and inspiration and impact is just all over, and they absolutely deserve to be on this list. So we're going to cover all of that right here, right now. We're going to start off. I got 10 here for you, but it's not a ranking. I'm just mentioning some of these musicians who really, really served a lot and did a lot of great stuff in these groups. Nick DiVirgilio. He's absolutely one of the best musicians going on. He started off in Spock's Beard back in the 90s, but he's been in so many projects. He's been in the Steve Hackett Band. He's in Big Big Train. He's on the Car Mechanic albums. He's just absolutely amazing, Nick DiVirgilio. And when Neil Morris left Spock's Beard in the 2000s, he pulled the Phil Collins and became the singer and drummer at the same time. And then he's just been in an absolute plethora of different projects. He's just a fantastic musician. One of my faves, a true inspiration, Nick DiVirgilio. If you haven't heard any of his projects, I would highly recommend the Big Big Train and the Spock's Beard stuff because it's all great. Patrick Moraz. He didn't have a very long stint in this band. Yes, of course. He was in Yes on the Relayer record, right? He only did the one album, but man, his impact on that record is just so fantastic. His contributions and the stuff he wrote for them in that time was just absolutely brilliant. He wrote Sound Chaser, at least the beginning part, that jazzy keyboard thing going on. That's how they start the song, right? And his keyboard solos all throughout that record on Sound Chaser, Gates of Delirium, he quickly proved himself to be one of the absolute best. And he has a plethora of great solo records. And he was in the Moody Blues. Obviously, a lot of people probably recognize that as well, that he was in the Moody Blues for a long time in the 80s. There are 2 or 3 albums at least. But yeah, his work on the Yes album absolutely earned his spot here on Prog Rock's Unsung Heroes, because he absolutely, Wakeman left the band, and who are they going to get if they can't have Wakeman? Patrick Moraz, one of the absolute best choices the band could have made for their sound at that time, and really took that jazz fusion element that they were going for, and he really worked well within that idea and helped push them into that time. It pushed them into that sphere, I suppose. Very good. Very amazing musician. The next one is a musician that was the right-hand man, sort of, for Frank Zappa for a lot of years in the early 1970s. That man is George Duke. Listen to how he responds to all the insanity of the Mothers of Invention and the Frank Zappa material. And particularly looking at the live records like Roxy and Elsewhere and such that was recorded during that time. And listen how he gels so well with the ideas that Frank had been throwing at him. Not to mention his performance on One Size Fits All is absolutely one of the best of all time. Inca Roads and the absolute brilliance and chaos that is that track in particular. George Duke is the man. He's an amazing keyboardist. He's a great vocalist. Great sense of humor, obviously, as everyone in the Zappa band has to have, right? But just absolutely fantastic in the way that, he sort of does these call and response things with Frank, especially live on stage. Where else can you get something like that, aside from being in the Zappa band, right? Oh, amazing, amazing. And George Duke, just one of the guys that helped to really hold it down in the Mothers of Invention when he was, doing his time there in the early 70s. Absolutely great musician. Thank you, George Duke. And next up, we got John Deacon. Now, I know we're talking about prog rock, and some of you might come in the comments saying, Queen's not prog. They are. They are, especially in the early days. Maybe not as much in the 80s and 90s or whatever, but they definitely were. You're going to tell me that the Prophet song is not prog. Absolutely is. And John Deacon is one of the guys that wrote quite a few of their actually biggest hits that they've had, like Another One Bites the Dust, You're My Best Friend, and there's many others that are not coming to mind right now, but John Deacon absolutely really holds down the low end in that band, and his bass lines are always super, super innovative. And just his presence in the band is very well known. He's oftentimes the quiet guy. Like he doesn't say much. I mean, he doesn't even do a lot of public appearances anymore. But listening to his performances on these Queen records, he really is their secret weapon. Next up, we're going to go more modern times with some 90s, 2000s, and obviously present day progressive metal, and Tool and their bass player Justin Chancellor. Listen to the bass riffs that guy comes up with. When you think of a lot of Tool songs and in the riffs and melodies that come to your mind, all you Tool fans out there, I bet most of them right off the hop are bass lines. And most of them, if it came out post-1996, are all Justin Chancellor. Absolutely fantastic. I've seen him play live with Tool quite a few times, and he never disappoints. The whole band is fantastic, obviously, but and his dance moves really are really brilliant. Just watching him move on stage is pretty funny, but no, the way he gels with the rest of the group and the way he sort of locks down that rhythmic foundation with Adam Jones and of course Danny Carey absolutely earns him a spot on this list. And again, his riffs are just chef's kiss. Justin Chancellor, you the man. And to write crazy stuff like that in those odd times, my guy. You are my guy. Justin Chancellor, fantastic. And next up, we have a guy who did a lot of time in Steve Hackett's live band and appeared on some of his solo records in the late 2000s and early 2010s and such. He's not playing with Steve anymore. Of course, Steve is now playing with guys like Nick DiVirgilio and Craig Blundell and other musicians. But for the longest time, Gary O'Toole was his right-hand man behind the drum kit. And I remember I've seen Gary O'Toole play with Steve live so many times. And he really, really, really contributed a lot to their live performances, I tell you that. Losing him in the fold was a big loss, and that's absolutely no disrespect to everyone who came and has been part of the Hackett band since him, because I've seen him with tons of other drummers, and they're all absolutely amazing. Nick DiVirgilio, Craig Blundell, and I think there's someone else playing with him now too, but they're all amazing. But Gary O'Toole and the way that he used to sing... So when they would do Blood on the Rooftops, the Genesis song, he would do the vocals on that and drum at the same time. Not to mention some of the stuff that he would, his own flair that he would throw in on the drums on the other Hackett solo tunes and Genesis songs, including the end of Shadow of the Hierophant. I mean, oh my gosh, Gary would just absolutely tear that up. And so... It's kind of sad to know that we'll never see him playing within the Hackett band again, although I trust Steve to make, obviously, the best decisions for his band, because Craig Blundell is an absolutely brilliant drummer. But Gary O'Toole and the way he would sing, a couple of the tunes like that, and just his presence on the stage was really known when you went to see the Hackett band, and it was always very enjoyable. So he is absolutely an unsung hero of progressive rock. Another one in the Genesis camp, going to the actual Genesis band, is Mike Rutherford. A lot of people recognize Genesis for Steve Hackett, Tony Banks, Peter Gabriel, and Phil Collins, obviously. But Mike Rutherford had a very, very big hand in, the foundation of the band, but also the writing process of a lot of their songs. I mean, listen to some of their songs like Back in New York City, and listen to what he's playing on the bass, those double... He's an absolutely fantastic musician. I mean, even going into their 80s work, like the bass lines in songs like Invisible Touch, No Reply at All... he's a fantastic writer and musician, and he wrote a lot of their songs too. He wrote a lot of their... Actually, he wrote their first big hit, Follow You, Follow Me. That was completely written by Mike Rutherford. And he's just an absolutely tremendous musician. And imagining any form of Genesis without him, you know what I mean? He's just such a big part of their sound. And not to mention, obviously, the fact that I mentioned he created the band. He formed the band with Peter Gabriel and Tony Banks, Anthony Phillips, all that. But Mike and the Mechanics, too, he was not only successful within Genesis, he went off and did a side project that was also very massive as well. Yeah, Mike Rutherford, definitely one of progressive rock's unsung heroes, but if you know, you know. You know? All right, another one. Again, you might say that this band is not prog with a capital P, and I'd have to say that in some instances you would be wrong. John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin. Yes, I know Led Zeppelin's mostly known for their bluesy, hard rock side, but they have a lot of progressive rock elements in their music too. I mean, look at this record right here, right? Presence. Fantastic. John Paul Jones did a lot of behind-the-scenes work in this band. And again, a lot of people recognize, John Bonham being one of the greatest drummers, absolutely. Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, all superstars in their own right. But John Paul Jones is kind of like the John Deacon of this band, where he really had such an impact and innovation in the contributions of the sound of the band. But maybe he's not the first person you think of when you think of Led Zeppelin. Of course, unless you're a musician, then you know, yeah, he's absolutely one of the greatest. But some of his keyboard work on songs like Since I've Been Loving You, not to mention his bass lines, I mean, Hello, Good Times, Bad Times, right? Absolutely fantastic musician. And a lot of people don't recognize that he wrote a lot of the riffs. Like, he wrote the riff to Immigrant Song. And so his contributions in part of Led Zeppelin is some of the most impactful music of all time. So, John Paul Jones, absolutely. And another one that is absolutely part of the classic progressive rock of the 1970s, 80s, and to this present day. This band has continued on without him to varying results, in my personal opinion, but Martin Barre of Jethro Tull, I mean, gosh, just bottom, down, 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 down. Everyone knows that riff. It is so iconic, and just, I'm getting chills even thinking about this, man. He's one of the absolute best guitar players I've ever heard. His playing on stuff like Minstrel in the Gallery, the Aqualung record, the solos that he does on Thick as a Brick, oh my god. And he made it so hard to, I can appreciate the stuff that Jethro Tull and Ian Anderson have been doing now, absolutely, but he made it so hard because you can listen to some of that stuff and go, oh, well, Martin Barre would have played something here, or imagine if Martin Barre had been on this, particular piece here, and things like that. So it kind of makes it a bit harder, especially when you're used to stuff like Heavy Horses and even the A album. Martin Barre is just all over all that classic stuff. And, you really see it now that he's not in the band anymore. You really kind of go, at least I do, I go, yeah, Martin Barre was definitely a big part in the contributions to this band. Obviously, Ian Anderson is the man. He did most of the writing and all that sort of thing. But again, Martin Barre really seemed to back that up and add his own flair to it. That it's very noticeable when he's not in the mix anymore. But love Jethro Tull anyway. Long live Ian Anderson and the rest of the band, everyone he's ever played with. I'm just saying, Martin Barre is absolutely an unsung hero of progressive rock. And I hear he's doing really well touring with his own band, doing classic Tull stuff. So if it ever comes back around me, I'm going to have to go see it. And the number one, like I said, this is not a ranking. It's just, how could this guy not be number one? I mean, you're in a band with Roger Waters, David Gilmour, two of the most infamous musicians in rock and roll history. But the guy that really is, again, he's a founding member of the band, and he was there through pretty much everything minus one record, but I don't like that record very much anyway. Richard Wright. I mean, just imagine Pink Floyd without Richard Wright. Can you do it? I can't. His atmosphere and his writing is so quintessential to the sound of that band that if you even imagine a Pink Floyd without him part of it, I mean, it's a no-go. It's a no-go, and I'm glad that they haven't tried to sort of do anything like that. Oh, this is Pink Floyd, no Richard Wright. No. I mean, even the last thing that they released, that Endless River, had stuff with him all over it because it was Division Bell stuff. And that's not really a great album either, but I'm just saying his contributions to Pink Floyd and the atmospheres that he creates with his piano work and his synth work and all that just absolutely earns him the top spot on this list. If it was a ranking or not, he is absolutely at the top of this list, no question about it. And the fact that Roger Waters thought that they could continue without him, that I just don't know about that. But, I mean, obviously, again, everyone in Pink Floyd, Nick Mason, Sid Barrett, David Gilmour, anyone who's ever been in Pink Floyd is an absolute master of a musician. They really know how to create an energy and a feel with what they decide to do. But Rick Wright is such a huge part of that, to the point where he knows when to sit back and let everyone else, he just serves the groove, serves the rhythm, and then he knows when to just completely take over the atmosphere and make it all about him for that segment or whatever respective segment that we're talking about in this case, like Great Gig in the Sky or something like that. The whole thing, just starting off with that beautiful somber piano, or even in songs like Echoes when he's just hitting the organ and letting Gilmore solo all over the top of it. It's just fantastic, and the way he serves this band is absolutely incredible. I could go on. Richard Wright. So in this list of prog rock's unsung heroes, we got Nick DiVirgilio of a plethora of bands, Patrick Moraz, George Duke, John Deacon, Justin Chancellor, Gary O'Toole, Mike Rutherford, John Paul Jones, Martin Barr, or Barre, I could be wrong, and Richard Wright. So there you have it, folks. There you have it. I'm Cody Brockway. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You have been watching Brockway's Vinyl Bites. Leave a comment, and if there's any unsung heroes that didn't make the list here, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Respectfully, of course. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Rock on!